integral altitude psychotherapists, they know that if there's a couple of people in relationship in an intersubjective container, that energetic container, which is another characteristic of integral altitude psychotherapy, you feel that container. It's an energetic container. You know that if you go in there and one person is with an open heart is trying to help the other person, something good is going to happen. Okay, and that's just all there is to it. That there's something good will come out of that, and that's very reassuring.
Yeah.
Because we can never, at least I can't. I can never help people, or rarely help people as much as I want to help them. Usually, there's something there. I I was reading with one guy. He had all kinds of gut stuff, and he had assertion stuff, and he has great relationship, um, but they're conflicted sexually, and they can't talk about it. And so all the stuff that I mentioned in our work got better. And so in our last session, I said, okay, so your gut stuff's going well, and your work stuff's going well, and your relationship is good. You love each other, but how about that sex thing? He said, well, yeah. And so I made a couple of suggestions, mostly that he and she come in so that I could, you know, help them. And he wasn't quite into it. And so I look back at that and I go, God, I wish I could go further with you. And I feel that way with most people. And we were talking about that right before the show. People get to decide how far they go.
That's right.
And so part of being a therapist is you help people as much as you can, and then if they're ready to not go into use that channel anymore, that's okay. And you go, okay, my blessing. I'm always here when you come back. Because one of the reasons I really take new people is because old people will call me after a year or two and they take precedence. That's why I have a long, waiting list.
Right.
And there's another thing that integral altitude therapists have in common. They know they have blind spots.
Right.
They know that there's stuff that they don't know. And they know it's going to show up at some point or another, either in a problem, that's usually where blind spots show up, or just something new that they learn. One of the most common examples of that recently is normal crazy and extra crazy. It's been shocking to me for decades. I mean, I've been teaching this for 20 years. When you're a teacher, sometimes you get frustrated that somebody you've been teaching a long time isn't known by everybody. Now I understand that this is a very popular podcast and everything, but it doesn't reach all the people, 7 billion people in the world, so it hasn't changed that zeitgeist. But particularly around normal crazy and extra crazy, the difference between extra crazy, particularly personality disorders, particularly the 10 that have been studied the most, but there's at least a couple more we know about. Blind spot.
Yep.
You just can't treat people with personality disorders with the same focus and principles safely. You can't. Extra crazy be as normal crazy. So you need to know the difference. Okay, that's a good example. But integral altitude therapists get that. That's why when I first brought this up to the Soul Tank group and so on, people's reactions were quite interesting. They were all integral reactions. They were like, okay, how can I apply this to my work? And, oh, by the way, can you come teach this to our group? I'm going to be teaching this to the Brazil group, to Marcelo's group in a couple of months.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't any resistance, hardly at all. And maybe a little bit from Bina. She says, well, wait a minute. How is this different? I went, well, then she and I went back and forth about the installation part. Because the idea of installation has to fit with adult development. And that's a delicate fit, because as change agents, we are installing capacities. Those capacities lead to vertical development, but there's a certain mystery about how that happens. So anyway, these are all common characteristics of integral altitude psychotherapists. And I see that, I'll see it in some of the more prominent people on the internet, Terry Real, not Susan Johnson. She criticizes other systems. John Gottman has that kind of an attitude. Um, uh, Schwartz, the guy who developed internal family systems, some of his students don't. Like some of the Jungian people wouldn't, but Jung would. Okay. Freud wouldn't have. Freud
Right.
defined himself by putting down other people. Alfred Adler would have. You look back and you can see the people that were working on that particular level. Um, Fritz Perls might. Maslow definitely would. Carl Rogers definitely would. Fritz Perls would if he was feeling generous. If he was one of his egocentric, narcissistic Fritz Perls moments, he'd go, no, bullshit. Everything's else is bullshit. It's a funny guy. It would be like that. Now, how do therapists do all this stuff? How do they enact it? This was a big question that I needed to answer to my own satisfaction in waking up. If this is going to be a manual on integrally informed psychotherapy, what are the things that people have to do? And there's basically 6 things. And so I'm going to mention them.
Yeah.
The first thing that you do is you relate. And that means you love your client. And you love them the way you love your wife or your son or your daughter during that particular hour. You love them. And you teach. You tell them as much good stuff as they're willing to absorb. One of the reasons, of course, you do that is because we're all complex systems. And what happens with complex systems? Well, as we know, on that edge between, the fractal edge of the linked differentiated parts where the new patterns are being formed. There's chaos and there's rigidity, and then there's uncertainty and confusion, and out of that comes these forms. Every once in a while, a new perspective will hit in. Productive self-awareness is one of those, and then the system will become more complex. So you teach. You also inspire. When you watch therapists work, Salvador Minuchin was one of the masters of this. He was the originator of structural family therapy. I love that guy. I love his work. And use that understanding. You want to inspire intense emotional transformative states. Diana Fascia called them transformance emotions. Intense awe, love, joy, even fear if it's experienced as pure anger, or even pure shame. Like intense, powerful states that feel transformative. And so therapists want to do that. And they do it by using their personality, using the intensity of what they're doing, using the capacity to generate ceremony during the session. And what I mean by that is everybody who's doing this, just at this moment, feel us all connected as a system. Okay, you're listening to me. I'm connected to you. Corey and I are connected to each other and to you. And feel within this container our positive intent to grow, to love, and to serve the world. And let's just all feel it. Feel it like a liquid, like a golden liquid of us, energy. And feel this liquid expanding, ever expanding. Love gets stronger when it expands. It doesn't dissipate, it gets thicker. Just feel our love expanding around the world, healing the world, right? Just feel it. Feel your power to heal the world, right? This is what I mean by creating ceremony to inspire. Relate, teach, inspire, and we also confront. Confrontation is telling somebody the truth. Somebody says, I keep on having trouble at work. I think those people are full of shit. And I go, somebody told me once that if one person is an asshole and everybody agrees they're kind of the asshole, but if ever you think everybody's the asshole, then you're probably the asshole. It's like you tell people the truth, okay? Now you can do it in an entertaining fashion, but you confront. And the other thing you do as a therapist is you interpret. And what I mean by interpreting is that Everything that we do is a pattern. How you and I are relating now is a series of patterns. Not just the patterns of Keith and Corey, which we've cultivated over the years, unconsciously mostly, but also consciously. All the patterns of who you are and all the patterns of who I am. And they're all being enacted in this particular fashion. Often when good things are happening or bad things are happening, we don't experience them as functions of patterns that are hardwired into us from our adaptive unconscious into the world. And so what therapists do is they point those patterns out. That's interpreting. Most of the patterns started when we were very young. And it's quite useful to understand the development of a particular pattern, particularly defensive patterns, because it takes a lot of the shame and rage out of them and confusion and begins to give us a developmental understanding of these things. So that's how we interpret. And the final thing that therapists do is we direct. Now, I know that Carl Rogers had this whole relationship therapy, and the therapist was non-directive. And a lot of people have misunderstood that guy. That he was so sophisticated that the people took his constructs and only understood like 60 or 70% of each one of them. And one of them was non-directive therapy. Non-directive therapy is not therapists not having opinions, moral stances, or advice. Non-directive therapy is, I'm not going to insist on you doing anything. I'm always going to give you, in every level I can, the respect of you get to decide for you. But it's my job to tell you what I think is best and what I think isn't best. And it's my job to have my own opinions about it, and it's my job to have a moral compass. And so we direct. I think that's a bad idea. I think that's a great idea. That's direction. So we relate, teach, inspire, confront, interpret, and direct. That's what integral altitude therapists do. And the more you do these things, the more time you spend being an integral altitude psychotherapist. You want to become one? Do these things and get better at them.